So the Nexus 6 has been announced, famously taking the name out of the android robots from the Blade Runner movie. If you like that movie and you like 80s movies, you'll recognise the name Nexus 6. So as the name implies, the Nexus 6 is a fairly large phone. In fact, it's actually a 5.96 inch 2560 by 1440 QHD AMOLED display with a density of 493 pixels per inch. Now, because it's actually 6 inches and it's QHD, it's actually going to be slightly lower density than something like the G3, which we have here. But it's still going to be super high res, like it's really crisp. 16 by 9 aspect ratio and Gorilla Glass 3. But it's a big phone.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, there's some video comparisons out already between it and the Note 4, which has always been known as the phablet that's kind of started everything. Obviously, when Samsung first made it, everyone thought they were crazy, but now all phones are gigantic. So yeah, it's slightly bigger and slightly thicker than what you're going to be getting with the Note 4, which can be a concern for some people. But if you're looking for a big phone anyway, a couple of extra millimeters here and there isn't really going to make too much difference, to be honest. But I mean, it looks really nice. Obviously, made by Motorola. Obviously, the Moto X first generation and the newer second gen is kind of where it's getting most of its looks from. But yeah, I'm a fan of the actual look of the phone. It looks really nice, and obviously maybe compared to previous Nexus devices, I would say maybe it's the best looking one, but that's kind of personal opinion.
Yeah, so it's just, as you're saying, it's just a blown up Moto X essentially. So take the Moto X, stretch it out in every dimension, and that's what you're going to get. It's got a 13 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, so hopefully really smooth video that's not really that sort of jerky. It's got a dual LED ring flash. It's not the traditional ring flash that you get for DSLRs that are really expensive. It's essentially just two flash bulbs with a reflector glass around it that spreads it out a bit. It's an f2.0 aperture, and it does record 4K, but only at 30 frames a second. There's no hint of anything like a slow-mo feature or anything like that, like the G3 has. So still, I think unfortunately we're in a position where the Nexus cameras aren't top of the line. Considering the rest of this device is, for all intents and purposes, super high-end, it's maybe disappointing to see that they haven't focused on the camera as much as people have been asking for ages on Nexus devices. And the front is a 2 megapixel HD.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the cameras are better. Obviously, in the past, Nexus devices have been known for having not bad cameras, but not as good as kind of what's been maybe advertised, or especially the Nexus 5, they had adverts and all this hype around the camera. And obviously before that initial software update, it was a not great camera. And the fact that this is more of a high-end device, I'm hoping that, with 13 megapixels, 4K video recording and things, that it is going to produce, some really nice pictures and things. I'm guessing 1080p video is probably going to be around 60 frames as it is on most devices. But yeah, again, with my phone slow-mo, again, like you mentioned, nothing mentioned with that. Whether it's going to be in there or not, whether they don't know whether that's going to be a major feature. But yeah, hopefully the camera's going to be a bit better than what we've had before.
Yeah, so in terms of other specs, of course, keeping on with this being a really high-end device for all intents and purposes, it's got a Snapdragon 805, which is pretty much the highest end you can get at the moment. It's a quad-core running at 2.7 gigahertz. It's a Adreno 420 graphics, which again are very high. It doesn't say on the official spec sheet, but I believe it is 3 gigs of RAM. Internally, and memory, so storage capacity 32 and 64, so decent sizes there. And again, I don't know why they didn't put that in the tablet, but 32 for a minimum I think is quite good, because I've got a 16 gig Nexus 5 and I definitely do struggle with space, so I think I would be looking at least definitely for 32 next time. And hopefully a decent battery, 3220,
which is bigger than the LG G3 by 220 milliamp hours. I can go a day perfectly fine with my phone. Obviously with more heavy gaming and video watching, it can kind of struggle, maybe put it on the charger around maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night. So for this to have this size battery, which is actually the same size battery as in the Note 4, and again the Note range is known for longevity, you can use it all day and into the next day. So again, hopefully that's going to be great, but obviously it does include the wireless charging the Nexus phones have had in the past. So obviously if you are short on juice, just pop it down your charger, and that's not going to be any issues there.
Yeah, and in terms of charging, it does have wireless charging, of course, and NFC and all those usual communication methods. But it does also have dual front-facing speakers, not boom sound like the HTC ones, but just dual front-facing speakers. That's the bar at the top and bottom you see on the front of the display, and it comes with all the other normal things. In terms of colours, it's just 2 colours. And don't be fooled, they're not white and blue. They are cloud white and midnight blue. So there's not actually a black one, but the midnight blue looks very, very dark, but with a blue hint, so it's not actually black, unfortunately.
Something that I forgot about with the battery, it has turbo charging. Obviously, with that, it allows you to put your phone on charge for only 15 minutes and get around 6 hours worth of usage. Obviously, whether this is probably going to be light usage, I'm guessing, but to be able to, just plug your phone in maybe before you're going out, for instance, or just before you're about to leave work and things, again, to have that is definitely a good thing. Obviously, my phone has a big battery that takes a long time to charge, whereas this has a specific charger built in, kind of like the iPad charger in a way, in terms of how much output it gives. That's how it gets the faster charging from the looks of things. But yeah, again, to have that built in is definitely going to aid in having the phone on all day, basically.
Yeah. So that's kind of the spec side of things with the Nexus 6. And the looks, again, it looks just like a blown up Moto X.
Without the Moto Maker features, which I think is definitely a shame.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the last thing, really, pricing and release date. Now, before you say it, we are going to be doing another video on the Nexus 6 pricing and why it is what it is and what we think about it.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. But what are the prices and release dates?
Yeah, for now we'll forget about that. But yeah, it's going to be... so the pre-order date is going to be the end of October. The 29th of October is when you'll be able to pre-order this phone. The actual date of when it's going to be released is a bit unclear at the moment. There's a lot of sites saying the beginning of November. Obviously Android L and also the Nexus 9 are coming out on the 3rd. So fingers crossed for around that sort of date. In terms of pricing, again, US pricing is 32 gigs is going to be $649, and then 64 gigs is $699. So again, in the UK, probably around the £500 mark or thereabouts, which obviously, again, is more expensive than what previous Nexus devices have been, but again, we'll save that for another video.
Yeah. So that's it for the Nexus 6. They got the 9, they got the 6. They're still keeping the 5. We won't go into that, of course, because it's been out for a while. I have it. I love it. I haven't made up my mind what I'm going to do yet, but I still love my 5. They're still going to be selling that. So the last device they released was the Nexus Player. So